Let me start by introducing our panelists, and then I'd like to give each of them a moment just to officially introduce themselves and make a little comment or two about what they do in their day-to-day lives. So our panelists today, we have with us from AAA, Kevin Harris and Brian Hinkle. We have with us from AIG, Chris Evans. And from the Humane Society, we have Aiko Okamoto. From our own team in Aparo, we have Stephanie McKee. If you've been with us before, I feel like you probably already know Stephanie, but you might not. But let's start with our guest speakers today, and I'll just go round robin. If you'll just introduce yourselves, give a quick comment about what you do in your day-to-day business, and then we'll turn our attention to content. Kevin, let's start with you, please.
Sure, thanks, Jennifer. So, as Jennifer mentioned, my name's Kevin Harris, and I've been in IT and security for just over 25 years. And the last 5 of those years have been at AAA Carolinas. So, very passionate about technology and, more importantly, security, which is the topic here. So, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working with all the panel and as well as the nonprofits to help you. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Brian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Hinkle. I've been in the IT industry for a little over 20 years as well. A lot of it has been focused on security and also just implementing solutions within the various organizations that I've been working. I've been with AAA for almost 5 years. And I'm here to help out in any way, shape, or form I can with answering any security questions you guys may have.
Thanks, Brian. Chris.
Thanks, Jennifer. My name is Christopher Evans. I'm relatively new to the industry, but I've been with AIG for 2 years. Recent graduate of the University of South Carolina, the bachelor's in integrated information technology. So a lot of our studies and lessons were around securing companies' data and making sure that companies have the infrastructure to support that. So I'm happy to give my advice and consult with nonprofits that need IT support. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Aiko.
Hello, my name is Aiko Okamoto. I'm from the Humane Society of Charlotte. I've been with the organization about 12 years now. We have about 60 employees, and so just like any other small local nonprofit, I do wear many hats. So I do IT, finance, HR, facility, and volunteer. So that's just kind of juggling all the kind of stuff.
You don't do very much at your job, do you, Aiko? Thank you. And Stephanie.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie McKee. I'm the Director of Technology for Aparo, and I head up a program for us called Tech Therapy. So I'm out in the nonprofit community in Greater Charlotte, helping you guys with IT solutions and resources around everything technology and security. I'm super passionate about security and so excited to have this awesome team of panelists with us to share lots of great information with you guys. So thanks for being here.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. So the intent for today, as I mentioned early on, is just to give you guys sort of a framework of some, what we hope are simple steps, simple actions that you can take just to help yourself be a little bit more protected in today's environment. With so many of us being thrust into a remote work situation, you know, it certainly has opened the door for some bad actors to maybe come in and maybe do some things that aren't really so desirable. What we'd like to do is just start off with a general question for our panelists, and we'll do a lot of round robin here as we talk. But I also encourage audience members as I pose these questions, if you have some input, put it in the chat and we'll share those questions and comments as well. But let's just start with a general question. Kevin, I'll begin with you. You know, it might seem obvious, but let's address why security is even an issue we need to talk about. Why is that important to you personally and to your company?
Sure. So if you look at the industry today, we live in a highly connected digital world where it seems like we have infinite access to knowledge and data right in the palm of our hands with the power that's in the smartphones. So in many cases, I look at that as a blessing and a curse, because as a business, be it nonprofit or for-profit, we can now capture data for our clients and customers and leverage that data to help better serve them, right? So that's the blessing of it. That helps us provide better services and better understand who our customers are, our clients are, and their actual needs. Now, where it gets a little hairy and could get more of a curse is there's a responsibility as a legitimate company that comes with that, that we need to maintain and manage the privacy of that data. And that's where security comes into play. Additionally, there's another side to business I like to call the evil side. There's a rather large and growing business perspective coming in where bad guys, and they're very technology savvy and they're very organized, are now, they want the same data that you're trying to collect because they want to use it for more sinister means. So they're trying to attack companies like all of you to capture that data and leverage it to hopefully extort for financial gains. So again, security comes into play because that's the disciplines, right? The knowledge and the processes and policies and technology that can protect us on a daily basis, not only from a business perspective, but also a personal perspective. So if you look at that, security's, again, even though I've been in technology all my career, security's been the utmost importance over the last 10 years because of the growing need and availability of data and the ubiquitous of technology. So it's become very critical to protection of not only the company's data, but more importantly, the consumer data and yours and my data. So that's why security is important to me and why it's important to all of us and the various companies that we were a part of.
Thanks, I appreciate that description. Chris, tell us a little bit about how you see security as important and relevant to this discussion from your perspective and your company's perspective.
Yeah, so I guess first from my company's perspective, I work for a Fortune 500 company, so it's very large and global in terms of both its outreach and where it conducts business. And so there's a lot of different types of laws and restrictions that you have to abide by in order to operate in those vicinities. So I think the first thing would be why security is important to my company is for reputation wise. I think that's probably the highest consequence that most businesses have to fear, is that you lose the trust of your clients or that of your employees, that you can't secure their data and continue to provide the resource that you offer. Second would be financial. The financial damage that can occur from hackers is really unforeseeable, depending on what type of data you control. I think it was reported that for small businesses, the approximate hack is probably like $6,000 to $9,000. But some of this is easily mitigated, I think, through proper education, which is what we in my company focus on, to try to educate our employees and our consumers of how we manage the data, both inside, externally, and how we deal with our vendors. So I think those are probably the biggest 2 points of why IT security is important to my company. From my personal perspective, me as an employee, I take great interest in security because my own personal information is collected by my company, by my employer. So they know a lot of information about me, and it's part of my job to remain secure personally so that I can both keep my personal data secure for the company as well as my colleagues and their personal data. So I think those are two of my biggest examples of why IT security is important.
I think you made 2 points that I want people to seat in their minds. Number one, education is a big part of what we can engage in just to make ourselves safer. Just knowing, because we don't know what we don't know. So we're gonna come back around to that subject, just training or education for end users. That's one key point. Another key point you made that I think is really interesting. Your own company has a lot of data about you as an employee. And by default, that makes your personal information at risk because it's housed within the enterprise. So I think that's a really interesting perspective. Aiko, let's switch gears a little bit. So you know, we just got some input from the enterprise perspective. Let's switch it up to the nonprofit view, right? Why is it that security is important for you personally and for Humane Society?
Yeah, it is kind of similar to what Chris was saying too, but you know, the trust is number one because everything financially as it comes from donors. So, you know, security is very important that they can trust us. We never want to give them some question about, is my credit card information going to be breached, some personal information. So obviously trust is very important, but also for us, just like I said, many of us wear many hats, and unfortunately IT, we cannot get a large budget for IT section. So we do outsource a lot of things with the third party for the IT, but it's just, we're understaffed in IT. Our technology is not as great, probably not top notch. So security, if if the incidents does happen, it costs money to recover everything that was not budgeted. It takes time because we don't have an IT department to work on fixing things. So it's just a business, everything operation stops. So it's a huge risk for us, the security, if it gets breached. I think it takes longer to recover than like 500 Fortune companies, unfortunately. So I think that's very important for us to remember that, or small nonprofit like us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, right? Because if you don't have the resources to recover, that's a whole new set of barriers that you have to deal with. And the reality of it is, if you have a breach or a break in your security, it's going to cost you resources, whether human resources, monetary resources. It's going to cost you some way or the other. So the whole idea is, hey, how do we get out ahead of this thing? You know.
Yes.
So I'm actually going to launch a little poll very quickly for you guys. So for our listening audience, quick question. Do you think in our current COVID-19 situation, this whole remote work environment, do you agree that your data is more at risk or not? Just your sense of how that is. We're getting some answers coming in. Right now, I think the vast majority of people are feeling like, yeah, you know, we're a little bit more at risk in this situation. And I think we should address the question, exactly why is it that we're more at risk? What is it about this current environment that elevates the risk factor? Yeah, I mean, the majority of people are feeling like, yes, we think this is a little bit more risky than perhaps our prior working environment. But Brian, let me start with you. What is it about this current work environment that we're in that makes us more at risk?
So a lot of that is the attack surface is now growing. So all the bad actors, when they're trying to come in, you're now working from home. So now you have to deal with people's home equipment. They're using maybe their own devices and getting into your data on your network, or however it is they're working. So you have changes in how your employees are working, so that changes their behavior and how they actually interact with things. You've got IT processes that may have been in place that you're now circumventing because you have people working from home. And it's a change. And unfortunately with change, there's an opportunity for the bad guys to come in and be able to take advantage of that. I guess if you want to take it a little bit further, when you're looking at some of the threats with COVID-19, you've got more phishing attacks that are happening. So now you're seeing a lot of attacks that are coming in that are going to be related to COVID-19. They're playing off your fears. They're trying to get you to click on it, get you to do something with it. And you're going to see a lot more of those coming in. So you're going to see a lot more phishing messages. Again, your employees are now working at home. Their home networks probably are not as secure as your corporate network or wherever it is you typically do business. So you're opening up everything to that as well.
You know, that brings me to a question, and it's something we've kind of talked about in this group and beyond on occasion when we're trying to filter it down. If I had to define what is the single biggest threat for security right now, what might that be? Might be unexpected for people. I think I just gave the answer away. Kevin, what would you say is kind of like the biggest threat right now for bad actors to get access?
I would say the biggest threat is people, right?
Yep.
Every one of us.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we are the weakest link, as the one game show always used to say. Unfortunately, people are inherently trusting, and they take things at face value. And unfortunately, that's one of the things the hackers kind of depend on. You know, hackers are opportunists. They focus on urgency, a crisis, a stress, or anxiousness. So when you see an email that has any of those things that's trying to make you urgently make a decision, you have to stop and say, wait a minute, I need to take caution with this because it's wanting me to make a rash decision right now that could lead me down a path that could be bad for me and the company. So the phishing emails that Brian was alluding to are those. So in case people don't know what phishing emails are, they're basically emails that hackers create that look legitimate, right? It may take COVID, for example, as a great example. In this current situation where we are all stressed and anxious about what's going to happen, they are using this extensively to try to attack and trick people. In fact, phishing emails have increased by 3,000%. That's humongous, right?
Wow.
So they're sending out emails that have COVID type topics, telling you that they have information to help you keep you safe. Maybe it's on new drugs, maybe it's about information that's in your area, but the whole goal is for you to click on that link or open that attachment, and then they deliver whatever malicious payload they want, or grab your credentials, your username, password. So yes, people unfortunately are the weakest link, and that's where, as you mentioned, and we'll probably get into more, but education is very important and being cautious. In fact, we try to train our employees jokingly. We say, we want you to be paranoid that someone is out to get you, because yes, they really are.
Kind of a sad statement, but hey, you know, we have to be cognizant of it. If we're not, we can't do anything about it. But you made a great point that I wanted to, you know, sort of connecting the dots. I said a second ago, you know, based on what Chris was saying, education or training is a big deal. Why? Because people are the weakest link. So, you know, that's a takeaway for our listening audience. We ourselves, you know, because we're so interested in trying to reply and trying to deliver service and trying to meet those needs, sometimes we just kind of go too quickly without evaluating, and then we open ourselves up, which is a perfect segue to let Aiko share with us a little bit about your experience in this area. Please tell us what you guys have encountered in this security threat.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kevin. The people are the weakest link, and unfortunately, we did experience some things. This was before COVID-19, but you know, we were receiving emails, you know, and they're very tricky and good at it. Obviously, they're looking at our website and know what each one of us do. So our employees were started getting emails, it pretending to be our CEO. And then if you don't look at the email address closely, and if you just glance at it, it does say it's from our president, and then the name appears, it is from her. And it says, you know, hey, I'm in a really important board meeting right now. and I really need to purchase $700 worth of gift card to give it to this very high-end donor to make some things happen. So I cannot answer your call or anything right now, but can you just go get those gift card and then just take a picture of the back of the gift card and send it to me? And, you know, unfortunately, one of our employees fell for that. And so when that happened, we realized that we really need to train our employees. So since then, we've been, and unfortunately, because they succeeded once, they are relentless. They're like sending us 3, 4, I receive like 3, 4 a week. Still, every week, I still receive those emails. So what we've been started doing is that we send out a weekly reminder email to everybody, and also attach the actual email we received as an example. Look at these examples. These are the emails as an example that this is the phishing emails, and then look at the email address. And then we also created a new policy saying that you are never allowed to purchase anything without a verbal confirmation from that person who is asking you. Because no matter how many times we tell them that, hey, our president will never all of a sudden reach out to you via email and ask you to purchase this random $800 worth of gift card. But I think if you don't work with her directly and you get an email from your CEO, they're like, oh, I got to do this right now for her. You know, so it's just, no matter how many times you tell them, it's kind of sometimes hard for them to understand. So we're just kind of weekly reminder, hey, the policy is that you never are allowed to purchase anything without getting a verbal confirmation if you get some request from your CEO. B, these are the example of the emails that we've been receiving every day. Look at it. Make sure you look at the email address. So we just kind of changed those policy and just kind of, you know, it's very repetitive, and probably some of the employees like, oh my gosh, she's sending this email again. But it's important to just keep reminding them, because we do get this, and then they're tricky. Like they change the message because they know that I do finance. They're like, hey, Aiko, I'm in this important board meeting, and we realize that we need to wire some money immediately. I can give you the information, so can you just respond to this email? It's very urgent. Like I get those emails all the time from my fake CEO. So yeah, that's one of the things just happened, and we learned and kind of changed our policy.
Well, I think it's interesting because you're really pointing out a couple of things. Number one, you had to think about the policies that are, you know, that you have in place around employee activity. So that's one strategy you had to deal with. And then you're doing the training piece. You're repeatedly going back and saying, see, this is an example. Let's keep it front of mind, so that, you know, people can remain aware of what they're looking at. So education, policies, and then Stephanie, you know, internally at Aparo, we do those things too, but we also use tools to help us. And, you know, I'm particularly like, full transparency, guys, I clicked on one of these darn emails once too. However, fortunately for me, I figured it out very quickly, and I was able to get Ben and Stephanie onto it. But the takeaway is I immediately felt better because of the whole iron scales thing. So talk a little bit about that as a tool, because we keep talking about how we surround ourselves with ways to address security. We talk about education policy. Tell us a little bit about why we use a tool like that and what it does for us.
Yeah, we used to get hit with a ton of phishing emails, and some were targeting, well, a lot of them were targeting Kim, our CEO. So we put some free solutions in place, as well as another tool called Iron Scales that specifically works with Office 365 and Google Suite. And it's very easy to set up. When a unknown person tries to send an email, we get alerted with a red banner in our email saying, this is an unknown sender. Do you want to trust this person? and we can say yes or not, no, or we can report them if it is a phishing email. So they have all this artificial intelligence going on in the back end that other people have reported the same type email or the email address or something's different in it that alerts the back-end system that, hey, be careful. So we can automatically report back, and we have cut down our phishing emails dramatically by probably 95%. Just implementing this tool, as well as there's a few things you can do with Office, especially Office 365 and Google, to mitigate your risk there and lessen the amount of emails that come through.
I felt a lot better after I clicked on that email, I can tell you. having those tools in place, and then of course having you and Ben fix it so I didn't ruin everything. And listen,
it wasn't too bad.
It wasn't too bad, but here's the thing, guys. Here's what's so interesting. Here's why I keep pointing out, like, even it can happen even to us. And what do I mean by even us? Like, our team at Aparo, we're pretty tech savvy. And that email, it's so interesting that came into me. The timing was parallel with a meeting we had just had with some of our constituents. We were getting ready to launch a project. There were some remaining questions around the conference call we had that very morning. I got that email afternoon time, and I was like, wow, they were quick on the draw. Boom, I answered it just like that. And it took me a minute. I don't even know what caught my attention, but I thought, wait a second. And that's when I got Ben and Stephanie involved. Anyway, the takeaway is they're really crafty, and they count on us doing exactly what I did. Oh, this is good timing. Yeah, they're right on it. Boom, I clicked, and that was it. So we just have to remain aware. I think that's the takeaway from this piece of it. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, Jennifer, I thought I'd just add in one to what
Sure.
point you just made is they are getting very crafty. And in fact, the latest trick they're doing is if they compromise one person in your company, they'll sit there and just watch the emails that person sends, and they'll look through. And then at some point, they'll strike and they'll send an email as that person, someone you trust, right? And you still have, so at this point, again, you have to be paranoid that you can't even trust the person sitting next to you in the next office at some points. You've got to question every email, especially if it has a link or an attachment, and say, is this things that I would normally get from this person? Is this something they would normally send me? And when you're not sure, what we tell our people is there's any inkling of caution, then you need to reach out to that person through a different means, not through email, and say, hey, did you send me this? Just as another safety measure, unfortunately, we're at that point.
Indeed. Indeed.
I'd like to build on Kevin. That's most of what I end up having to investigate for us. It's usually another company that we are a partner with, and their account has been compromised, and they're sending it over to one of our travel agents or insurance agents, and now they're asking for specific information or that person to do something, and they're keeping the email chain going. So it looks like it's a valid email. So you really have to be careful about who you're doing business with too. So what Aiko mentioned about setting up a process where you have to get a verbal confirmation, that's one of the better things you can do. You should never let email be the final confirmation for doing any type of transfer of funds, anything like that. And also be worried about any links where they're trying to get you to download a document, and it's like, why are you asking me to download a document? Because that's one of the things they try to do with the conversation piece as well.
Chris, listening to those 2 points that Kevin and Brian just made, how are you guys managing these things inside of AIG? What kinds of, are people accidentally clicking on phishing emails? And then how are you guys mitigating for that going forward, in addition to the education piece?
Yeah, so we do a number of different things. We have obviously the education aspect where periodically, whether it be quarterly or yearly, employees are asked to engage in some type of education. It varies depending on the subject, but it can include, some test things like you can't proceed basically unless you discover what it is that they were trying to hide from you or something of that nature. We also, employ a lot of the email tactics that you mentioned about siphoning through some of these emails that are from outside of the company before they get to the user, scanning them for malicious attachments or links. And then I think the other thing that we do that I would advocate for is the advocacy part. So the training or education doesn't just come from the CEO or the top down saying, this is what you have to do, click here and be compliant. It's more of like they give the content to the managers, and the managers are asked to engage with the employees, make them understand why security is important, show them that their data is also a target, tell them how they can improve by sharing with others how you improve security, how you recognize phishing emails, sharing those emails that you think are phishing, reporting them to your IT management or whoever's dealing with your email servers. And I think that's probably the biggest one, is being an advocate for security yourself and encouraging your employees to do the same because it's in their best interest.
Indeed. You know, we have a question that came up in the Q&A that I want us to address live, but before we do that, I want to loop back around to ICO. You know, we're having this discussion about, you know, policies, tools, you know, strategies to address this. But one thing that we haven't really gotten into yet is the impact once you do have a breach. And really, it really struck me, Aiko, when you were describing, I don't even remember the words you used, but I remember I started hyperventilating thinking, oh no, that must have been terrible. Tell us literally, you know, what was the impact once you realized that you guys had a huge breach? What did it mean for your legacy information? How did you know, how did you deal with emails that were coming in from constituencies? Like, give us the concrete impact, why this is so important, because it cost you guys a lot of time.
Yeah, so the $700 or $800 gift card was one incident, but unfortunately we did have another incident a couple years ago. You know, just like you guys are describing, email looked like it came from one of our volunteers, and it was. So apparently that volunteer's email was compromised, so it was sending all kinds of stuff, but we didn't realize it was a fake email from our volunteer email, and asked our employees to click on it, like she was working on some project at school or something like that, and unfortunately one of our employees clicked it, and that spread out a kryptonite, like ransom virus, and it just completely corrupted all of our data in most of our server. And by the time I started getting email from all of our employees saying, hey, I can't open this Word document that I used to be able to open, and when you open it, you can't read it. Like, when I started getting all those email, it was just completely spread up. And so nothing was working. We couldn't read anything. So I had to call our IT company. And then unfortunately, when that happened, it was about 5 years ago, we had really limited budget allocated for IT. So our IT company was only overseeing our server, not individual computers. So by the time it happened, and then we were doing backup on our own too. So it was just like all kinds of stuff was everywhere. It wasn't managed central location, so to speak. So by the time we realized backup was backing up corrupted data as well, so we couldn't really get information from the backup crowd. So we ended up, everything stopped, like no email, no data, no internet for like 3 days straight. And that was just the worst nightmare I've experienced. It was just, everything stopped. Everybody was calling us like, hey, adoption, what happened to this one? Hey, my appointment for the surgery, this and that. It was just insane amount of phone calls was coming in because nobody was responding to nothing. So yeah, it literally everything, our business stopped for 3 days, 3-4 days. And also because we don't have an IT department within organization, it cost us financially a tremendous amount of money to hire those external people to to spend 3-4 days straight at our location to build back our server and correct everything up. So yeah, that's literally how many days and a lot of financially, it costs a lot of money. And then eventually we realized that we needed to allocate a lot more IT, a lot more on IT after that experience. And so we were able to increase budget, and the now IT company oversees not just server, but each one of our PC and doing the patchwork and the antivirus and all those things and backup. It's just now one company is overseeing everything for us, but it wasn't like that. So that was a big lesson learned. But yeah, it was just about 3-4 days, everything froze and no communication with outside. So,
question: was that experience one of the things that informed your decision to go to Microsoft O365, to a
yes.
cloud environment?
Yes, sorry, yeah, that was the big decision we decided to do, was that, okay, if this were to happen and if the server freezes, if we were doing the Office 365, then at least email were working and we can have people work from home or whatever, so they at least have the email. So that's the huge motivation it was 5 years ago when that happened. Okay, let's start looking at moving away from just everything on the server, and if something happened to the server, everything just stops kind of situation. So yes, that was the huge reason.
Gotcha.
To move to Office 365.
So I want us to, we'll take that point a little bit further in a minute, but I want to come back to a Q&A, a question that was raised. And the question is this: are there any tools as individuals that people can use in their home for email that's similar to the Iron Scales tool? And really, that gets to part of what we're trying to provide, is some free or low-cost resources that you can bring to bear to help increase your safety. So yeah, let's start with Chris. Can you point us to any tools that individuals might be able to access to help tighten up on this home email thing?
So Jennifer, I'll save that particular one for Kevin or AAA, but one thing I wanted to touch on and offer is, so phishing, when people talk about phishing, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously emails, text, maybe even a phone call or a voice call. And really the bottom line of phishing is that someone is trying to disguise their intentions for malicious gain. And so I think one of the things that I wanted to point out is that phishing can occur not only directly to your personal email, but as you generally and graciously use the internet. I mean, as you browse websites, it's typically good practice not to visit websites that you don't know, that are unknown, that are sent to you, that are suggested that you go to that maybe you haven't heard of before. I know that can sound a little counterintuitive, being that the internet is so vast and you may have not have heard of these sites and whatnot, but it's more simple to do a quick check on the site, search it on Google, see its reviews, see its level of depth, how many pages are on the site, its complexity, to tell whether or not it's a legit website or if it's one that could cause you risk. And I think one of the things that I wanted to offer is a free alternative, and most web browsers have them. It's essentially choosing to not enable your plugins, or let's just say you click on a link or an image or something that says download unknowingly. Sometimes a lot of browsers enable the fact that you can download or run plugins or attachments in the browser. So you don't actually have to download to your system, but it opens you up to these attacks and to these threats that you otherwise wouldn't be if you had simply, whatever browser you're using, search how to enable click to play. And essentially, it's different for each browser. I think Chrome says, let me choose when I want to run a plugin or something of that nature. But you simply check that, and then when you click on something or open another link or whatnot, it will tell you if a plugin is trying to run, and you choose whether or not you allow that to happen. And so I think that was the tip that I could offer that's free. You could do it on most web browsers, if not all, and save you a little trouble of unknowingly clicking on something that might run on your computer.
That's a great point, right? Just use settings that are already embedded in the software. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking about, what? I don't know how to set that stuff up in my browser, that's what Aparo's for, right? If any of these strategies that we're throwing out there for your consideration are of interest to you, but you're not sure how to pursue it, you know, give us a ring and we'll try to help you navigate through that. So Kevin, let's switch over to you. What are some other low cost or no cost tools, strategies, whatnot, that we can bring to the table as home users and limited resource availability users to help us be more safe?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Chris made some very good points. In fact, the industry as a whole is trying to do a better job to make those security settings default. Like Google Chrome browser is one of them that does it as well. So that should help. But let's start from a nonprofit standpoint and maybe the email systems they use, and then I'll bring it down to a personal. So probably a lot of nonprofits like IECO have leveraged cloud services like Office 365 or Google's G Suite. And both of those are offering as their nonprofits platforms some of the basic security suites that we're talking about. So Office 365 has what they call ATP, which is Advanced Threat Protection. And so they're doing a lot of that basic phishing, malware detection and prevention before the email is delivered to you. So it's important that the nonprofits know that those abilities are there. And in a lot of cases, they could actually go in and tune them a little bit more, or perhaps reach out to Aparo to find out what tuning they need to do to make it a little bit more stringent and stronger. So, but beyond that, from a personal standpoint and from an employee standpoint, it's also important. We use the term defense in depth in security a lot because it's going to be eventually one of those layers are going to fail. Just let's take, for example, phishing. We use a product called Proofpoint, similar to the Iron Port, and they don't guarantee 100% blockage, right? Typically we get from 98 to 95% blocking of phishing emails. Guess what? That means there's 3 to 5% making its way through to employees. So that's just enough because we only need one, just as we've mentioned. So you've got to depend on other depths of security. In this case, on the endpoint, we highly recommend having an antivirus package installed on your system. We use ESET, which is ESET, across our enterprise. I also use it personally on my home computers. Most of the antiviruses, Norton's is another one, Bitdefender. There's several out there that are very popular. We're talking $50 or less, mostly 25 bucks. It's a small price to pay to protect your system. And the reason I bring them up because they're more than just for capturing viruses and malware, but a lot of them also will protect your email. So they'll link in with your email client, and they'll actually, with community information coming in, they'll help you identify if something got delivered in your mailbox that could be a potential phishing or malicious email, and either block it or at least warn you about it. So that would be my recommendation. And then I'll hand it over to Brian to see if he has anything else.
Yeah, so for me, it's the same thing that Kevin said. And the antivirus, any malware that you get will also stop you from getting where you're clicking on a link in an email and it sends you to a bad website. They can also assist with stopping that traffic from occurring and notifying you that you're being sent to a bad website. Because the link may say google.com on it, but it actually sends you to some guy's home, website where they're trying to infect you with malware or get you to do something bad. So they keep a lot of that up to date for you. Outlook does something that's similar to what ATP does. So it does a URL rewrite inside of it if you use outlook.com. So when you click on that phishing email or email, it automatically goes through and checks it. I don't believe Google does that yet. Neither does like Yahoo, but they all have different security features you can go through and enable. And it's also going to be different how you're accessing your email. You may be more protected if you've got ESET or some other antivirus installed on your PC and you're accessing your email there. You'll be more protected there. Everyone thinks their phones are impervious, but they're not either. If you're not running anything there, you click on it, you're going to go to that link in your phone because it doesn't have any type protection on it possibly. So you should also be running something there, especially Android devices, and even on Apple. People think Apple is just not going to be hit by malware or something like that, but they will be too. So a lot of it is everybody's afraid of doing anything. But the biggest thing you can do is, one, make sure your PC is up to date with the latest browser updates. And also, like Chrome, make sure you're updating Chrome. Make sure you're updating, if you're using some other browser, Firefox. Don't use IE anymore. It's not supported. Make sure you're using Edge. Nobody likes Edge, but you know, either use Edge, Chrome, or Firefox. Make sure you use a supported browser. Make sure your phones are updated regularly. They send those updates out for a reason. I mean, it's not to, it's going to take an hour to download and my phone's going to be off for like 30 minutes and I can't get to Facebook on it, whatever it may be, whatever the reason may be. Make sure you're updating your phones. It's something that you can do for free. You don't have to do, there's no payment for that. Just keep your software updated. A lot of that is the bad guys are hoping you click on a link, and if you're using an old browser, it's going to allow access to your system, and now they have you. If you have an updated browser, it may already have the patches in it to where they can't, infect your PC and your environment with whatever it is they're trying to do. I want to say that Chris brought up a really good process as well. So the COVID-19, I'll use that as an example. You get an email, it says, hey, we have new face masks or whatever that are available. Click this link to see where they're at or where you can get them. Don't click on the link there. It's always good to open up a browser, do the research yourself. You got an email from somebody or something out of the blue. You don't know where that came from. Or even if it came from your mom or maybe your best friend, you don't know if their accounts have been compromised. I know my mom's accounts have been compromised multiple times. So you can't always trust what they're sending you. So do the work yourself. Just do a Google search. Just open up another browser and then search for what you want if you're interested in that topic. Don't just always click on the links that are in the emails. So.
Yeah, I mean, great points there, in terms of low cost or free resources we can use. I mean, simple things like backing up your software and that kind of thing. Updating your software is what I meant to say. And Stephanie, if you would speak a little bit about what we do inside of Aparo, about software updates and passwords and stuff like that, just some things that you and Ben try to make sure that we all stay on top of, just to keep us as safe as possible.
Sure. So we, as far as passwords go, we have all cloud systems. Like we use Salesforce, Office 365, and NetSuite as our financial. We have two-factor authentication set up on all of those, which means that when I go to log into my Salesforce, instead of just me putting a password in, I have to go to the app on my phone to allow, it gives me an extra step to say, hey, it is really Stephanie that is accessing Salesforce. And same with Office 365 as well. We get a secondary code that comes after we enter our password. So that's an extra level of protection. Let's see, what else are we doing? As far as passwords go, we require, 8 characters up to 16 characters and upper lower symbols as well, or a paraphrase. We have a enterprise level firewall in place that helps protect us, that also has integrated protection for our email as well, phishing and malware coming through. It will catch it as another endpoint. And we use antivirus. And we've put some extra level of security in our Office 365 that was free for us to do. And if anybody has questions about that, or you're running Google Suite, I can send you information and happy to walk you through how to implement a higher level of security in those 2 tools.
Perfect.
And I am Jennifer. To add to our resources, I've got some good information on, it's kind of a summary of attacks that have come about over the past 2 months around COVID, phishing and malware that are coming through that we can share with the group and our resources. So I'll shoot that over to you to include some really good information, one pager.
Perfect. That'll be great. Yeah, guys, when we share resources after today's meeting, we'll have some links as well as what Stephanie was just mentioning there, trying to have, you know, some physical product, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you can have access to. So I'm mindful of the time. We're at 12:54, and I want to make sure that I reach back out to our listening audience and find out if you have any questions or comments or concerns that you'd like to get out on the table while we have our panelists with us. So I'll encourage you to hop into chat or Q&A as we approach these last several minutes of our presentation today. One of the things I'd like to do is loop back around to Chris one more time on this education piece of training staff and educating staff to be aware of the risks. Tell us just briefly, in the limited time we have left, tell us a little bit about how you guys go about it. And what I mean is this. Do you have a specific tool that you use? Is there a specific cadence? And by the way, what do you do if somebody does click on one of those emails and boom, you're busted? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm glad we circled back to education, and hopefully we can end on that as a big takeaway, regardless of the technical implementation or software you should use. Education is probably the biggest aspect. For us, we do it a number of different ways. There's no perfect tool or application or even program that is suffice for teaching humans. I mean, it's just the nature of the job. And so the best thing you can do is make it frequent, make it often, and make it impactful. Like that's what we try to do. And I think that education does a lot more for your organization than just stopping a threat or making sure your data is secure, or putting you in a position to avoid a financial loss or something of that nature. It can add a number of things. It can increase your employee retention. No one really likes to work at a boring job. So when someone works at a company who will put time to educate them in something they had never heard of and can pose a lot of value, they see that as a way of increasing their own potential, their own career, and will most likely stay with you as long as you're continuing to do that. I think that's something that my company particularly has benefited from, is looking at education as a way of increasing everyone's personal knowledge and your own aspect of developing your career or whatever it is that you want to do, but taking the time to give you information that you weren't receiving before. And you may think, oh, you have a large company, you guys have well thought out education programs and people sharing this information, but I'd like to remind you that the internet has a vast number of resources and information as far as how you can remain secure. And it doesn't have to be sending out fake emails and having your employees click on them, but just educating them on the small things that they can do reoccurringly, like Stephanie mentioned, updating your password. We recommend every 90 days, something not the same. Those small things that you can get adapted to and advocate for and actually do are the things that are going to protect you the most in the case of human error. And you wanted me to mention some of the things that we do as far as promoting or rewarding negatives to failing one of these tests. We actually do have phishing tests that go out, I think, every 2 or 3 months, where each employee is tested could be the same email, could be a different email. They have a number of different ones, but if you fail it, you're required to do maybe some additional training, or the frequency of phishing emails or test emails might increase for you until they see that your percentage has increased. The best thing is re-education. I mean, if someone passes, it's not worth your success to chastise them. You never know what an employee is going to do, where they're going to use that as okay, well, I'll do this instead, or, so you want to reinforce it with more education, showing them where they made a mistake, saying that this is how you can improve, and then obviously providing that benefit at the end.
Perfect. Thank you for describing that. I appreciate it. I think, as you point out, we want to come back to awareness raising over and over and over again. People and social engineering are sort of at center stage for these bad actors who are coming in here. They know how to leverage our vulnerabilities. And one of the ways that I think we can engage in protecting ourselves to the best of our ability, we're never going to be 100% secure from everything. When you build something, there's always somebody on the other side figuring out how to break it, right? So we're not going to be 100%, but we can do our best by remaining aware, following policies and procedures and guidelines. And if we do suspect that maybe there's been a breach or we've, clicked on something we shouldn't have done, get your IT team, your security team, whomever it is, involved as quickly as possible to try to mitigate whatever it is that's happening, and try to minimize the negative impact that you may experience, much in the way that Aiko described, time, stress, budget, tools, everything. It just affected their entire lives, and so their entire work life. And so I think the takeaway is you have to stay vigilant. And as I say, in just these last few seconds that we have, if this stuff is stressing you out and you're not exactly sure, what steps to take, or who do I speak to, or what do I even do, reach out to Aparo. We're happy to help you navigate that journey. We have relationships with great folks like Kevin and Brian and Chris, who are skilled volunteers that have said, yeah, sure, we'll be happy to perhaps brainstorm with you, or maybe we can come in on a project to help people when they need to straighten these things out. So just know that you've got a community resource. That's what we do. That's what Aparo's role is. And we're more than happy to bring resources to bear in as much as we can. With that, I'm going to thank everybody today for joining us. I particularly would like to thank our panelists for making time. I know you guys, everybody has a really full schedule. And as always, we appreciate your generosity in bringing your expertise to the table so that we can then share it out with others. So I thank you so much for your time. And for our listening audience, I bid you a good day and thank you for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you guys again on our next weekly webinar as we go forward trying to bring you valuable information just to make your operations function a little more smoothly and hopefully without hiccups. So guys, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.